Okay.
I have unmuted all on my side, but I see many are still muted, sir.
As long as they're muted on, as long as they're unmuted on your side, then the ability is there. So I think we are clear. Okay, the purpose of this meeting tonight is the special business involving engineering services proposed for roadway repairs and repaving. We will get to a presentation here from Monty Plank from Central Florida Engineering Consultants, LLC in just a moment. Wanted to inform everybody, on-board members, that there will be open forum after Monty's presentation, strictly on the presentation that he gives and information involving the roadway repairs and repaving. That is the only business that we'll be conducting tonight. Of course, the meeting on Thursday, rescheduled from last week, is our regular monthly meeting. So I'm glad that everybody is here, but this is the focal point for this evening. Chuck, if you can mute everybody while Monty gives his presentation. And Monty, if you...
Okay.
Thank you, Chuck. Perfect.
Hey, sorry, just following orders.
Amen. Thank you.
Let me get Monty. Hang on.
All right.
All right, I think we're good.
All right, Monty, I'm going to step out of your way, and we'll hear from you about the roadway repairs and repaving for 1,000 Oaks. Monty, can you hear me?
Oh, I'm sorry. So you're waiting for me to come on, sir? Okay,
Yeah,
you're talking, Chuck. If you're ready,
we're ready for you whenever you're ready.
Oh, well, it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure to meet you. Yes, I'm Chuck. I met Chuck probably half a dozen or better years ago when I managed the repaving of a large community, upon which he was the on-site man. It was a $1 million job. We're civil engineers. I've been in business in Orlando since 19. Repaving is one of the specialties that we engage upon. We're a full engineering firm. We have
we're getting some breakup there, Monty. I was hoping we might be able to push through it, but we might have to ask you. We might have to maybe reset your router on your end, and we can take a delay here for a minute to let you reload. But I would hate for you to go through everything and us not be able to retain
a number of projects.
Get that in the bud right now.
Projects under design right now that include as much as Holiday Inn facilities. Over on my side of the business, if you will, construction management, building lead, I built. Take it a little slower.
We're not able to hear. Like, we missed everything that you said was basically.
Can you all hear me?
We can hear you, but it's breaking up intermittently. So we need to just rectify that before we can proceed.
Okay.
So if your internet router in your home or your modem, you might want to disconnect from the call and just reboot that. It might take 5 to 7 minutes, but we can wait for that. If you know how, unplug and replug back in. I hope that didn't come across the wrong way if you know how, but some are more complicated than others. But just want to make sure that we can retain the info you're saying. Go ahead, Britt.
Brian, if he's having trouble presenting to us, he's having trouble hearing us as well. It works both ways, so he can't hear you.
Chuck, can you maybe call Monty and see if we can take care of that?
Yeah, hold on, please.
Thank you. All right. Hello? Chuck, if you can hear me, if that's a smartphone he has, that might be a better connection unless he needs to show PowerPoint or something like that.
Okay, I told him to try the telephone call-in number and see if he can get a better connection, because that'll come straight through you.
Yeah, he doesn't need to, uh, the information is all verbal, there's no visual, so he doesn't need to be.
Yeah. But he's still
Can you
have,
all hear me now?
just have his phone on.
We can hear you. Monty, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now.
We
There
can
you
hear
go.
you. It starts to stutter sometimes, but while we are clear and you're here, let's try to proceed this way.
Well, thank you so much for bearing with me.
No, I appreciate you. Thank you for getting it worked out. We
Thank
want to hear everything you have to say.
Great. I was speaking to the experience. My old face can probably underscore I've been in the business for a long time. And when I met Chuck, actually, it was when I was performing the same services on $1 million repave, and that was probably 6 years ago or better. We cater to the private association industry for infrastructure issues, from turnover reports, erosion remediation, compliance, and a lot of roadway consulting and rebuilding. Well, your community is at that stage where you do need to do rebuilding. I got out and I toured the community with Chuck and another gentleman that I don't recognize right now. Was that one of you?
Was that you, Mike? Mike's muted, but go ahead, Mike. Is that you?
Yes, that
Okay.
was me. That's correct.
Okay, yeah, that was Mike, our president.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Thank you. And then we followed up with it from there. One of the differences in your community than most of the subdivisions or condominiums that I repave is that you are located in the city of Orlando, and that will necessitate permitting. It's like one more tax. I have not recently permitted a repave through the city of Orlando. However, 2 years ago, there was a large sinkhole that had taken out Lake Nona Boulevard and was taking out roadways within Village Walk and threatening a residence. I permitted that through the city while I directed restoration operations, and all of that was successfully completed. That was quite a challenge. But with that grew my displeasure of having to work with a bureaucracy. And a large part of our work when we're doing bona fide engineering plans is permitting. But usually in construction management for private gated communities, usually that is left with, well, it's your asphalt, your community, it's up to you to maintain it. And city or county engineers do not usually get involved. Here in Orlando, you can consider it completely different, that we will need to go through permitting. Usually I can do a subdivision without getting into engineering drawings and spelling it all out. But the city of Orlando will require a site plan. The problem with that, or the issue with that, is where it may go. Where it may go is how much they want you to become compliant. Right. there would be criteria on your parking stall spaces, both on the sizes, the amounts, but pretty much, I mean, you're grandfathered, and you got to live with what you have. The question mark that I do not know until we get into it will have to do with handicap access. Will they start making retrofits on that? I have long been employed as an engineer because I'm not a yes or yes ma'am engineer, but rather I try to see if we can do something more reasonable to my client's interest.
Sure.
So as we are engaged, one of the first items that we would do would to be meet with whomever, I don't know if it's Doug Foster or who is reviewing now. I would meet with one of the city engineers and go through the parameters that they would expect to be seen on the plans.
Monty, can
I anticipate?
Can I stop you for just one quick second? Because we have somebody just came on telephone, caller 3.
Sure.
So we need to identify them. So caller 3, if you can identify yourself, please. Make sure that they are unmuted. Caller 3, is that you there? Can you identify yourself, please?
Jim Wade.
Okay. Hey, Jim, thanks for jumping on. Okay, we can mute that. And then, Keith, I see that you're pulled up twice. Did you have a bad connection, or can we drop one of the two? Can you, Chuck, can you make sure that Keith is unmuted, both of them, in case one of them's working and one isn't?
All right.
Keith, can you identify one or the other? Just we have you pulled up here twice, so we want to just make sure we have you counted for. Okay, no harm having two. So you can keep going, Monty. Chuck, if you can make sure everybody's muted out again.
Will do.
Thank you. And excellent. Thanks, Monty, for your patience. You can go ahead.
Absolutely. Am I back on you? Thank you. What we can anticipate within the site plan that we will need to prepare is that we will need basically a base map survey of your existing driveway, the roadways, and improvements. Chuck tells me that he believes that you may have a survey. I am hoping that it will be adequate. What we have provided in our proposal is that if that survey needs to be augmented, within our scope would be to help solicit survey proposal prices to be passed on to the association for your direct employee. So we're going to need a survey to prepare our base sheets. From that survey, I can anticipate in the permitting that we will need to go ahead and demarcate parking spaces. With that, though, it also goes into the handicap then, and how that mushroom is going to raise its head, I do not know. We will seek to try to put handicap where it makes the most benefit in the way of site improvements currently existing. But we have little doubt that we will get into some modifications to your flat work. That would be the ramp, sidewalks, curbs, and then the ramps getting to it. If we do need to add handicaps, we want to approach it. We want to try to make it minimal and make it reasonable. This, ladies and gentlemen, is a bit of a black box to me over where we're heading. We have done numerous site plans, and several site plans through the city of Altamont Springs that can be incredibly anal as well. So we feel sure that with the numbers that we have given you, excluding getting into an embroglio over the handicap accommodations, in other words, as we get into handicap accommodations, we'll have to get into some grading information on the plans. There's nothing in the way of repaving your community that would necessitate me to work on grading, showing that we don't have over a 1 to 12 slope to the handicap, or that we don't have over a 5% a slope of the access itself, or that we don't have over a 2% cross slope. We don't need to do any of that to actually do your paving, but I do not know what the city may force on that hand. Thusly, our proposal to you is to propose what we do know that we will have to do, but it would be an extra and an hourly basis for what embroglios we may get into in the way of handicap. And we want to try to minimize that. That is my one unknown in your project, besides your budget and how much of the existing extruded curb that you would want to replace. Now, usually when we go out, well, when you repave, it is the time to take care of your bad curb. Quite often, it's a curb and gutter, unlike your extruded curb, but either one of those have to be replaced because of root impacts from trees. You've got a lot of that. I don't know, we'll get into a thing that says, well, you replaced the curb here and you didn't replace it there. I really would like to have some guidance just over the quality of the amount of curb that you would want to have replaced, or to have a budget. Because this curb, I can tell you, without having priced this curb out, the conventional curb and gutter section will run somewhere from $40 to $60 per running foot. So it's an expensive commodity that we want to just reasonably replace. Your curb does not affect the drainage, but to a very minor degree. Usually our curb and gutters, by them being popped up, impacts flow lines and causes the flooding in front of people's driveways. That's not an issue with yours, but with yours, you have so much of it fractured. What is your budget on that? When I go forward with our design, what our design would do, we would specify the type of pavement, but then the pavement itself is to then be over your existing pavement that is to be milled. In touring your community, I realized, I believe, right at 100% of your pavement has to be milled. That is the process of removing it. We need to remove it because of the way that it connects. Everything has to flow. So we will do a studied plan where we can, if we can avoid milling it, it makes sense to leave it in place. We will identify that on the plans. Our plans, ultimately, as I say, most often we can work without plans. The city's going to require plans. Where do we go with the plans? How much do we get into the handicap? But we can take care of this. Sir, were you raising your hand? David? No, I guess
No.
not. Okay. So at any rate, usually the process is we go on out there, we inventory, we discern just exactly what we need to do in the way of the work, the milling, the repave. We identify both in note and in demarcations what curbing that we're going to be replacing. We identify the additional work items such as dealing with your speed bumps or restoring perhaps inlet tops. You have manholes and they will need to be adjusted. But we spend some good time in the field doing field truthing or inventory to put together a tight schedule of what we see is the criteria that you need, so that then we can formulate a bid form together with our specifications and our directions to bidders to then be able to go out and go to qualified vendors to acquire apples to apples bids. So some little bit of work, we have to get through the city permitting, revisions to them. I talked to one of my preferred vendors, driveway maintenance, and asked them, about this in the permitting in the city, and they said without any doubt, but they would have to follow our lead as engineers to have a permitted site, and they would need some help from us then perhaps to help them through in the permitting. And again, most sites are not permitted this way. So we know permitting's involved. We don't know just how much will be involved in it. We know we can get through that. We don't know how much we're going to have to spend additionally in the way of handicap accommodations. I don't think there should be much other in the way of accommodations that would be insisted upon. I mean, we would not have to get into showing that we've got turn radii and all of that, support fire department access, like what we have to in current site plans. At any rate, we get the city approval, we go out to bid with this bid form, and we solicit bids. Go ahead, Chuck.
I was just going to tell you that with regard to a survey, I don't know that this will help, but I've got a survey dated December of 2016 that was intended to determine the boundary line between Lake Pine Lock community next door to us and the 1000 Oaks community. But the plat, it actually shows basically it's just a big rectangle box, Monty, of showing actual found markers on all four corners of the boundary. I would show you, but it won't show up here really well.
Right.
It's just a box.
Chuck,
As far as the road, I mean, nothing's going to be there for the roadway, so I'm not sure if that would help or not, where you're talking about needing a survey. I just wanted to let you know what I'm aware that we have in-house at the moment.
I anticipate that it would not help. I anticipate that we need to specifically show the existing, all of the pavement and parking before a survey would be requested or ordered. We would have our meeting with the city to seek to identify the handicap impacts. The reason that we need to qualify that before the survey is to see to what extent that we need to add topographic information. And again, that topographic, yes, sir?
Well, I was going to say, in regard to handicap, it looks to me like we have a couple of places. There's two of them down here at the rec area, and there's at least one that I'm, right off the top of my head, I'm aware of a couple of buildings away. But I think that for the most part, they appear to have been somewhat randomly placed, or because it's a condominium, somebody requested a handicap spot near their unit and one was designated. So it doesn't appear that we have a whole lot of specifically designated from the original plan. Just like they've been.
We would argue is that
been added over the years.
Okay, good. And what we would argue, and I know you have some, what we would argue is that the handicap parking that you have has proved up over 20 years to be sufficient for your need, and that we do not need to add any handicap spaces. What we will probably get into it from them, though, from there, is that we need to show sufficient access from those handicap sites. Well, then you get into some issues on that as well, with them wanting to add the 5-foot access lane, etc., etc. And we say, well, instead of that, why don't instead we look at trying to access the sidewalk from this side? It's going to be a give and take working with what you have. We're very experienced at that, but we just don't know the extents that they want. But that will be the first thing to do.
But real quick, just because it's come up, like regardless of what we have now, whatever is needed is painted over the pavement. It's not different pavement that's underneath it. Like we have to prepare for it in advance. We just whatever we need to have, whatever the criteria is, it doesn't affect the fact that there's still pavement. It's not like we're not going to pave the existing handicap spots, right?
That is correct. Handicap spots need to be 12 feet wide. They need
Right.
to have a 5-foot access to the side of them.
Right.
And then from that point, you need to have access ramps that are a minimum 4 feet wide that need to be sloped at not over a particular slope of 1 to 12. Give you a little bit on that. Okay. And then they want to see that you can trace it through to where you need to go.
Right.
This is not like we're all parking and trying to go to the clubhouse, but it's all negotiated with what you have. Russell Maynard, who is my designer, and I've been partners. We work for a civil design group, where we both worked together for 2 years, and he and I have worked together now for about, I think it's probably close to 12 years under the same shingle. But he has created a lot of commercial sites through and about Orlando and Orange County, etc. He would be the person generally on first when it had to do with the negotiating of the handicap and to try to keep that minimal. Each handicap space you add may impact one good parking space. So it gets to how many spaces do we have, how many residents, and how onerous is the city going to be over that.
Sure.
So
real quick, Monty, before you move on. We have Carmen joined us. Carmen, can you unmute Carmen, Chuck, and we can just, I forget what unit number you are, Carmen. We just need to identify.
Hey everyone, I'm at Wendy's right now, but I'm at unit 1076B.
1076B, excellent. Make sure you bring Frosties back for everybody. All 141 of our units.
Oh God, it's gonna melt. You know, I'll bring back 3. You guys can fight amongst them.
Thank you, Carmen. Brittany already playing one. Okay, we can mute that. I'm sorry, Monty. We just with the digital and with the video conferencing, we just have to make sure that all of our members are identified. We're getting new software for meetings that will be it may be password locked to just unit members, so that there's no worry of compromise. But we just make sure everybody's identified when they jump in. So I appreciate you letting me stop you again.
Oh, anytime, no apology due. I certainly appreciate this opportunity to present what we want to provide for you, what we've outlined to provide for you. But I've spent a little while now on the handicap. That's the only black box to me out here, and we would hope to keep it as a limited black box. But that drove the issue that dovetails in with the city permitting, the need for survey that we will have to acquire, and then our field truthing that we add to the survey, creating a site plan out of it, starting off with dialogue with the city as well, and then we formulate the site plan. The site plan would take anywhere from a month to 3 months to get through the city. I would hope that it would be the sooner. We certainly have permitting through the city within our scope, but we have excluded embroglio additional because of handicap. That we're just saying designate this as a handicap space and this one not, add a sign. We have no issue with that. The handicap where it gets difficult for us is the redo, tearing out walks, grading, etc. So we've always been very reasonable on it. I usually try to, or always try to, a lump sum a project. But this one item, I am not able to. So going on further with that, just like the county or the city in any road that they may build, they always want the QC of having geotechnical testing, materials testing of the asphalt that is going down. I learned back many years ago not to do a project without having the coring done by a geotechnical engineer. That right there we have sought and worked out to really curtail the amount of testing compared to public work. And I accomplish this by less corings, that's drilling holes, less of them than the county or municipality require, and to limit the size of them. We work with both 6-inch and 2-inch coring. The 2-inch one will be able to prove up the thickness of the asphalt. The 6-inch, we can additionally prove up, I say the specific gravity, that's the compaction of it. Contractors, the contractors that I typically work with are good with them knowing that we're taking tests and that it's not just my time and my assistant's time out there, and seeing that they're probing and they're putting that inch down if that's the spec. And we do a lot of that. There's a lot of time we're not there. The idea that we need to do some compaction testing at the end raises the bar up to where it needs to be. I had many years ago been involved in repaving a big community, an overlay in an area, and within a short time you see grass growing up through the asphalt, and you say, is that the full inch in that area? Well, the coring is what we do to be able to show, look, we delivered both over what the pavement compaction should be, which the strength of concrete goes to its compaction, and then also to the depth. So I've given you a estimate of what I believe the consultant, Mike Tanous Engineering, what his numbers would be. He was supposed to have had a proposal to me on Friday, and I've got him swamped and got something out of him on Lake Forest up here. This last year, we paved a big community in Seminole County. This morning, I had an inspector down on, maybe the huge community on RQC, Eagle Creek. But at any rate, Mike was stretched. He didn't give me the actual number. The contract would be directly between your association and Mike, but I had anticipated, as I stated, to be something in the neighborhood of $3,000. Those items are what I see as extraneous and beyond what we have proposed. Namely, again, extra involvements on the handicap, survey, geotechnical. For my involvements, otherwise, I have itemized them on a basis walking you through what we see as the process. We wear two hats, or we're proposing to wear two hats to you on this project, as we do on all of our projects. The first one being an engineer, writing specs, quantifying it for the bid, and putting and working it through the city, getting it permitted through the city. Our construction manager hat goes on as we prepare the bid documents that I've been speaking of, place it out to bid, get 3 qualified bids. We would get 3 qualified bids. I don't like to get a lot more. These contractors are accustomed to playing very hard to get it, but I will get you at least 3. And then in those 3 bids, we analyze them. We do a spreadsheet. It's pretty simple with the apples to apples. Somebody's not quoting an inch and a half or something totally different on this line item. So it's fairly straightforward to get to the point of understanding what's going to be spent. In that contract award, I write the contract. I sat for years with the American Arbitration Association as an arbitrator on large complex cases. I pride myself in writing a pretty tight contract. Actually, it's a contract form. It's an AIA, Construction Manager Edition, but it gives me the ability to put all of the parameters in it, and then they identify what all of the, well, what ifs. But in this document, I name myself both as the engineer and the construction manager, and your jury is pretty much loaded. What I do in that contract is try to rightfully put the onus of this contract, the unknowns, over on the contractor. Any contract quote that you will get will mention about excess tonnage, and then we'll bill it at $110 per ton. And we cannot help if we pond water. Well, I speak to those items in my bid forms, in my contract. If water wasn't ponding before, it's certainly not going to be ponding afterwards. A lot of the ponding that you have will work very hard to make go away. And there's just not to be loose ends on that. When it comes to the dollar amount on the paving and milling, that is to be a lump sum amount. We need to give them some information for them to be able to make their choices in their bidding. What I will do is I will measure everything up, but our contract specs say it's totally up to them to qualify each one of it. But again, it goes to, on these items that are hard to measure, they will be awarded. It's a lump sum contract. The items that we do allow to pierce that lump sum contract are items upon which I place an allowance, and that would be for curb work, because the curb work will vary from what I will be able to estimate. Hopefully it won't vary a lot, but we will have a price for a per foot of curb work that then we will measure the curb at the end of the day, and then that will be their remuneration. Additional curb rates pops out. Managers say, let's pick up this other, you didn't have this 50 feet in it. Curb work always changes. That's where we work quite a little bit to both curtail it and to confirm it. But the curb work typically is the only item that we allow within our contract awards to be deviated upon from a lump sum, where it is to be paid upon as a what's out there. So to quickly look at the proposal that I have for you and go through the issues on it, I had spoken of a pre-bid roadway assessment inventory. This is when we get out to the community, we go through and we identify the issues, we compile it. I know that you've got some problems with the stormwater inlet repair in one place, etc. We put that on the table. If for some reason you have a item that we see that is not within the domain of the paving contractor, or to get expensive, I work with a host of vendors that we could have accommodate the issue. In other words, if you had a failing pipe in one of your stormwater inlets. I don't see that right now, but we can address whatever you have. Survey I spoke to. Testing I spoke to. That's again the geotechnical. Then we get in there and we have the engineering plans that we are preparing. I spoke to that. We will need to base those on the survey. There'll need to be a plan to be able to present to the city and be able to go through. We have the permitting that would be required through the city. This project does not impact the amount of stormwater runoff. This should be of no consequence. The city would be. Going on from there, the construction management is where we feel that we really do make a difference. I've just been speaking to that briefly about our apples to apples. We secure the bids. We put them out to you with a recommendation. I spoke to the contractor, and again on that contract, it states right there that I use that AIA formatted construction manager. Matter of fact, I use the same contract, an older form of it, Chuck, on your $1 million project, Eastwood.
Right.
Then in the construction management, there's a necessity to protect you in the way of lien laws, postings of notice of commencement, etc. We will take care of that. And then we do the litany of other items that will come in with doing quality assurance. We do not commit to the number of hours that we will be out on site, except to say that we will be out there to make sure that you have sufficient work being performed. We have, we can straighten up a contractor quite quickly. If we can't, we're out there a lot more. But as you get in there and you get into milling, you don't want to have slop along the sides that's not taken care of. You get in there in asphalt, you don't want to get it laid down where it's not properly compacted. We're out there in all of the key operations, and we're out there every day that the work is underway, whether it be milling or paving, but we're not full time. Also, though, the geotechnical engineer that would be doing the coring for us, adjunct to that, we let them weigh in and want them to weigh in on their quality control. If Anthony tells them they need to do something, they'll tell me that. If they don't, we'll get it done another way. But what we do is we prepare apples to apples. We get it permitted. We compare apples to apples. We get you a bid that we feel very comfortable with, will be what you want. We put parameters in the contract, such as a 1-year warranty. We let them know that we're expecting that before the award. We ride herd on the property all the way through it. They submit their bills, and we go through it and do recommendations. If there's a valid reason for a change order, which we really try to avoid, we negotiate that on your behalf. And then we do recommendations on it. Basically, what we are is your consultant to make everything work, to deliver as good of a project as you could hope to get, and at the most reasonable price that you could get it. We've done a lot of this work over the last. We've done a lot of this work. We have a good tight team. Certainly welcome the opportunity to have proposed. I don't know. It's not a challenge to me what you have. This is something that we do, and something we deliver well upon.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Monty. Are you? Can you take some questions if it's okay, especially from board comments and questions?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, great. Because we have open forum. Again, open forum is limited strictly to this subject that we are having the presentation for. So I'm going to, Chuck, if you can unmute board members. So Regina, Mike, and Lisa. Brenda's unmuted, and I see Brittany is unmuted as well. So we see we've also unmuted Jim, and Jim is a member of our financial committee. Mike, is that correct?
That would be correct.
And Rex,
And Jim.
and Rex is a part of. Is he a part of the ARC committee?
Yes, it would be part of the ARC committee.
Okay, so just making sure that even though Rex and Jim aren't they're not board members, they are committee members, and they are in committees that this information is relevant. So we wanted to make sure that they were invited on to address any questions they had. But I'm going to go to Mike first. Mike, if you have any comments, questions, or anything like that, we'll go to you, and then Regina and Lisa, since you guys are all together.
Yeah, no, personally, I have no questions. I have a lot of this information in front of me, and I've spoken with Monty as we walk the property, and basically, I've got this information. I'd like to leave it to other members to ask more questions.
Regina, Lisa, do you have anything?
I do. Lisa, do you?
I don't have any at this time.
Okay.
Okay, Lisa. Regina?
Regina has a question.
Let me know if you can't hear me with my mask on. I wanted to ask Monty, hello Monty, what the acronym specifically for the permitting, the MPDES and the SJRWMD pertain to?
You wanted me to expand upon those?
Yeah, if you can. Yeah, what the acronym for
The
and
NPDES is National Pollutant Discharge Elimination. It's a criteria that's enforced through the local Department of Environmental Protection. It's that they want to make sure that anything that we do doesn't cause any adverse impacts to the environment. If we have our milling machine out there and he's milling and he's got a big old dust cloud going, that's a violation. If we are out there and we're letting the trimmings all get into the stormwater system, that's a violation. It's basically a item that we will need to show a plan on behalf of the city that they will want, that will show that we will be environmentally sensitive. We'll put inlet blocks at each of the inlets. We'll have different criteria to that end. I have before stopped the work and told people with like a broom tractor to get either different equipment.
can you mute Brenda? I'm sure she won't mind. She's at the field right now, so we're just.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Please mute me.
No, it's okay. It's totally okay. I'll unmute you in a couple of minutes if you have any questions or anything that you want to.
Okay, thanks.
Go ahead. Thank you. Go ahead, Monty. Sorry.
So the NPDES is a paper tiger. You do it right, it's not an issue. It's quite straightforward. The SJWMRD is St. John's River Water Management District. Sorry, I didn't spell that out. I do not anticipate any issue whatsoever with them. This is not a water management and stormwater runoff impact. So they would not be involved. If we were doing a pond modification, a stormwater modification, we would have to talk to them about getting a permit or a permit exemption. So really only the city of Orlando, and then adjunct to them is our NPDES, which is the environmental permit application.
Great. Thank you, Monty.
Thank you.
You have another one, Regina?
I do. I have a little bit of a list. Will we, Monty, receive progress reports? I mean, obviously we'll be able to see the progression visually, but just any problems that arise, any type of report that will be issued by Mike?
The Chuck will be on a very much of a first call basis with me. What we really want to do, and part of what we do is I had prepared information that I would give Chuck to notify to the community at large to anticipate just exactly what will be involved. Like before we even start, I believe you may need some tree trimmings. I'll walk the site with Chuck and determine what out there needs to be done on that. And then as we get the community side tallied on up, I will give Chuck some really to the point information to educate the people there over how long do they have to stay off the pavement, what are going to be the impacts, etc. To go into that. The actual physical construction, once we're out there, moves along very quickly. You have the milling machines that go out there and mill the roads, but you can drive over those roads after they have milled. With the tightness of your community, I anticipate that you will be fully milled and that equipment will be removed before we commence with the paving operation. The paving operation, you'll have actually about only 1 hour where residents cannot drive over a pavement area. So it's, as far as the impacts to the community, it is so much less than if we were going to do a sealing, asphalt sealing or rejuvenating, where you would have to be off the pavement for a day. There's only about an hour, and that comes into, the machine goes by very quickly, but there's a downtime there when the tack is put down before we do the paving, and that's about 20 minutes to get ready for the paving, for it to break, if you will. It's what's called breaking. Then once we put the paving down, the paving, you can get on that within about 30 minutes after that. So it's a much less of an impact, but items that we'll want to address is sequencing it with coordinating with the garbage company, with other access issues, to have the residents not schedule deliveries during this particular week of work, etc. But all of this is spoken to in information that's put out in front. What I have always insisted upon in any project that I'm in is that we additionally have the contractor provide a variable message board. And it's a big board right at the entrance that tells them, okay, paving's coming in a week. Don't park on the roads. That's going to, and it depends on the size of the community, how often that is revised, but pretty much it gives notice. You can tell them to read their emails. We can get some information out there and just let us know we're coming. Once we're into construction, if I run into issues like exposed, we've had one community that had a huge void underneath the roadway from some previous work from a utility company. If we run into issues that create a little bit of a workaround, I will be on a hotline with Chuck to address that and to address any potential change in action, change orders, etc. So we very much communicate with the manager. There's been our modus operandi during the final construction phases.
Excellent. Thank you, Monty. Next one, Regina.
Can you speak to your proposal states a final walkthrough, but will you be providing a punch after the paving, after you can walk on it, with the contractors to ensure that it's even and done to spec? And also, can you speak to your closeout process and if we will receive, as a community, a hard copy and electronic copy, or either?
Okay, yes, absolutely. You know, before I do any recommendation on the final payment, we all have, I mean, the manager, the HOA president, and the member will join me on a walkthrough to make sure everybody's happy. We will get a guarantee from the contractor, and we will get the lien releases from the contractor. On the punch out, the one item that you will be wanting to show that you have your pavement sufficient is warranty, but that's where it really comes in to the geotechnical certifications. There will be a report, there will be a log of the cores, and identification of the compaction and thickness of each one of them. All of that is done electronically,
and will be provided to the community manager for his disbursement.
Perfect.
Thank
Regina?